So this is what my garage storage looks like right now. It's alright, but I'm looking to upgrade to something a little bit better. What I have now is mostly a mix of old kitchen cabinets, like you can see here, that were clearly moved to the garage during a reno at some point. And then we have a bunch of these crappy wooden benches that I've made myself over the years. Another crappy wooden bench over here. You can see this one's completely buried in car parts. So while what I have is functional, it's really not very aesthetically pleasing. You can see the way it's kind of divided up here is I've got a high level of storage, I've got a low level of storage, and I've got this middle level, which usually functions as a workbench. Now, I'd like to preserve that same kind of structure while at the same time making this look quite a bit less janky, DIY shed build, and a bit more sleek and professional. So I started by removing these old kitchen countertops. Now these came out really easy because they weren't even attached in any way, they were just sitting loose on top of the cabinets. These countertops are really just awful. For starters, they're disgusting, but they're also very fragile. I think they're just MDF with a cheap laminate glued on top of them. They really don't instill a lot of confidence if you're trying to work on like a heavy item while it's sitting on there, so I'm really happy to see these go. And then once the countertops were out of the way, I started to pull out the cabinets themselves. These things had clearly been installed and removed at least a couple times, probably from the kitchen, and then maybe even pulled out of the garage a couple times. They were ready to go to the dump. They're completely falling apart, and again, I'm not sad to see them go. Once I got the counters out, I was able to start getting rid of these cabinets. So you can see I started by getting rid of this shelf up here, and then this corner cabinet, which I thought I might keep, but I kind of trashed it in the process of getting rid of it, so I ended up not keeping it. And then this stand-up cabinet, which I didn't want to keep, but I kind of ended up keeping it out of necessity. I made the mistake of not taking any of the stuff out of this cabinet, so there's about 35 pounds of oil and a bunch of spray cans in here. So it was a huge pain in the ass to move around. Once the countertops were out of the way, I pulled all the stuff off my pegboard and I took the pegboard down as well. I'm going to keep it, but it's going to have to get moved somewhere else. So my plan is to replace everything with steel shelves. These are the steel shelves I bought from Home Depot. I bought 2 boxes of shelves, but if you move the shelves around, you can actually use this to make 3 sections of shelving, so I thought it was a pretty good idea. These shelves are super easy to assemble. It's literally just uprights with stringers in between. It's exactly like pallet racking. The only hard part is right here where you get the first one set up, but there's no other stringer to counterbalance it, but I made it work by myself. That's the basics of what one shelf looks like, and then I went ahead and added more shelves to it so it looks like this. You can see I have a shelf on top, and then my middle shelf that's going to be a workbench, and then a shelf slightly below that that I think I can use to hold drawers and stuff that I need quick access to, like hardware and that kind of thing. So next I had to get this crappy workbench out of the way. This one actually came with my house. I didn't build it. It's extremely flimsy. The top is just like a piece of Corian or something weird, and I don't like it, so this one's also going to the dump. And in its place, obviously, another shelf. Once this was in place, I was able to get the most important tool in place, and while I'm at it, might as well crack one open. So now, my toolbox used to be over here in the corner, but I'd like it in a more central location, so I want to move it over here next to the fridge. Then what I'd like to do is take this bench here that has my drill press and my belt sander and move it over to where my toolbox used to be. Problem is that my toolbox isn't one of those short chest style toolboxes, it's the bottom box of a tall 2-box setup. So in order to get it to fit under the shelf, I had to prop it up on some inferior toolboxes and take the wheels off. Then once the wheels were off, it fit very nicely underneath that middle shelf. This is what it looked like with those first 2 sections of shelving in place, and I think at this point you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Next, I had to move a ton of car parts around to make room for the 3rd section of shelves, and I also had to move this bench over to where my toolbox used to be, and I also had to get rid of my couch. And once all that stuff was out of the way, I was able to get the 3rd section of shelving set up. This one I made the bench nice and low so I can sit at it with a desk chair, and then I added an extra shelf at the top. With the shelves in place, I had a bit of space left in the corner, so I shoved this tall cabinet in here. I'm not thrilled about still having this tall cabinet in the mix, but I can upgrade it later to a nicer looking cabinet if I need to. When I started this project, I assumed I would only have 2 sections of shelves, and I thought I would have a lot of space over here on this wall, but it turns out that I have 3 sections of shelves, and now I have nowhere to put my couch. I have this crappy old folding table here that I use as a temporary workbench, and it generally tends to collect just anything that I'm too lazy to put away in the garage, so I ended up just getting rid of it and putting the couch in its place. And now the couch can collect anything that I'm too lazy to put away. So for the bench tops on the middle level, I cut down some 3/4 inch plywood, which I was able to basically press fit into the middle shelf. It ended up working pretty good, but I may replace these in the future with something heftier like butcher's block, but I did not have butcher's block money in my $0 intended budget. Once the benches were in, I put up some supports to go behind the pegboard, and then I cut down the original pegboard and I mounted it again in this more central location. And then once the pegboard was hung, I put some tools on it, which will probably get moved around and added to as I kind of figure my organization system out. So this section over here on the far right, I decided would be kind of the hub for all of my power tools. So the first thing I did was I took this red shelf, which is left over from a previous owner, and I hung that up. And this is what I'm going to use to hold my router bits and Forstner bits, drill bits, and then I also hung up a battery charger. I also took this little hook thing and I hung that up, and that can be used for stuff like extension cords. So at this point I've got all 3 shelves set up, and I've got the basics of how I want everything to be organized laid out, but as you can see it is still complete chaos in here. I really made a huge mess when I was taking apart the old storage system. And rather than spend another 20 minutes showing me cleaning it, I'm just going to do this. And you can see it's quite a bit better now. This is what I would call kind of the finished product. Obviously it's nowhere near finished. This is going to evolve and change for years to come, but given the scope of what I set out to do, this is basically done at this point. And this is just a refresher of what it looked like before I started anything, and this is what it looks like now. This is my kind of desk style workbench. This is the one I kind of finished the least here. It still needs a lot of, wall storage and that kind of thing, but this will be a good place to, do soldering or any work I need to do on a computer. This is the middle workbench that I imagine will get used the most. It's got my toolbox, it's got the beers, and it's got all of the, hand tools that need to be within reach at any given time. And this is kind of my power tool hub. You can see down below I've got a bunch of fluid related stuff. I've got my floor dry. In the middle I've got some drawers that contain a bunch of hardware and electrical equipment. And then on that workbench level, I've got power tools and accessories. This area didn't really get any love at all in this video. All I did was move in this workbench that has my drill press and belt sander on it. The shelf with all the car parts on it was here before, and probably in the future I would like to tidy this area up as well. I still have literally hundreds of parts of my 240 strewn across this garage, which prevented me from getting really seriously organized. You can see it still covers the entire couch section, and the entire top floor of this shelving unit is all car parts. But as I continue to put that car back together, I will continue to unlock more space that I can use for organizational purposes rather than just car parts storage. So yeah, this is the finished product. This is what it looks like right now. And I'm super happy with how this turned out. I think it looks 1,000 times better than it did when I started. As I mentioned a couple times in this video, this is obviously going to continue growing and evolving as I figure out how to most efficiently use this space. And I'm very excited to, keep figuring this out. If you like this video, the kind of non-car related DIY video, be sure to let me know because, I like making this kind of video and I'll make more. And thank you for watching.